How's it going, people? Sam and Slava here, and this is RuneScape Lore, where we take a look at all the history and kind of the important figures in RuneScape. So yeah, carrying on from last time, we talked about Sliske. That was the first part, and we kind of talked about, well, his personality and kind of his powers and what he's generally kind of known for. And yeah, this is kind of carrying on from there. So the first episode of this, we did talk about kind of like his main abilities, some of the main reasons why he's known for, and a bit about who he actually is. So today, carrying on from that, we're going to be taking a look at his history. And believe me when I say this, his history is quite massive. He's been around, old Sliske. He's been a little bit of everywhere. But much like the rest of the Mahjarrat, it all started when they arrived upon Gielinor. And much like the other Mahjarrat, Sliske was born on Freneskae. This was a planet of perpetual warfare, along with many other tribes of the Dreams of Ma. Here, he and many other Mahjarrat would live to survive the elements and the destructive power of the legendary Mother Ma. And Mother Ma is an elder god that actually created their race, and whom they would prevent from wreaking havoc on Freneskae through things known as the Ritual of Rejuvenation and the Ritual of Enervation. And these rituals were actually taught to them by Seren. And you may know Seren, she's actually the god's, kind of like the deity protector of elven kind, pretty much. At least one Mahjarrat regarded her as a mere myth, and the rituals were simply superstitious traditions though. Due to the constant conflict with neighbouring tribes such as the Mahjarrat, as well as the frequent sacrifices of the rituals, the Mahjarrat tribe never really counted more than a few hundred members and was ruled kratocratically. But this soon began to change in the Second Age of Gielinor. And this was because two demigods by the name of Ixthlarin and Amascut decided to travel to Freneskae in order to recruit the Mahjarrat to fight the Zarosian invaders of their homeland, the Caridian Empire. Some Mahjarrat, however, would oppose this proposal, while others would straight up agree to it. This in turn caused a large battle to break out. Both Azanadra and Temegel, two of the strongest Mahjarrat at the time, argued that the Mahjarrat should go with Ixthlarin. Sliske was quite happy to leave Freneskae, as he considered it an extremely boring place with absolutely nothing to do. Eventually, after the death of one known as Salisad and the sacrifice of Abrogale, Sliske and the others in favour of travelling to Gielinor eventually emerged victorious, and in turn the entire Mahjarrat tribe accompanied the two gods to Gielinor. It was there that Sliske aided the Menaphite warriors in driving back the Zarosian army, and he did this with quite some success. And during this time, all of the Mahjarrat that came along were known as the stern judges of Ixthlarin. He was described by Graham Kobold, a mercenary for the Menaphites at the time, as being, well, dangerous and untrustworthy. Yet, similarly, at the same time, Kobold actually felt a kind of connection with him. Sliske fought with immense pleasure, constantly moving through the Shadow Realm to surprise his Zarosian opponents, before quickly killing them and resurrecting them as undead wights. On one occasion, he saved Kobold from the blade of a Zarosian scout, put his finger to his lips, grinned, and disappeared, leaving the mercenary in awe. Soon, however, Sliske's method began to displease Ixthlarin though, especially because he kept dead warriors from moving to the afterlife, using them as his slaves instead. After all the Zarosians were repelled from the desert, Ixthlarin soon requested for Sliske to hand over his wights, and when Sliske refused his offer, he took all of Sliske's wights by force and released their souls. Now if you don't know anything about Ixthlarin, Ixthlarin is known as kind of like the god of the dead, or he's kind of like the ruler of the afterlife is the easiest way I could possibly explain it. And in turn, the fact that Sliske was basically possessing bodies and preventing their souls from moving on to, well, Ixthlarin's realm, Ixthlarin got a bit pissy. And in turn, yeah, he ended up just forcibly taking them from Sliske, which, to Sliske, he basically just lost his toys. That's what I think. Anyway, that's my kind of view on Sliske. When that happened to him, I dare say he was very angry, and the fact that he's just lost basically quite a lot of powerful physical force, and at the same time, they were his playthings. This is kind of the way Sliske works. Anyway, upon that happening, due to that feud with the Cthulhu, he ended up approaching a Zarosian legate. And this legate was actually a Chthonian demon, and he went by the name of Duke Karez. And soon he made arrangements to desert the Menophites and join with Zaros. On doing this, he actually managed to convince most of the other Mahjarrat to actually join him, and soon they all convened at the fortress of Caradet. It was here that they actually met with Zaros himself, and joined him after Zaros showed some keen understanding of their ways. Sliske and the other Mahjarrat soon emerged from the fortress, joining arms with the Zarosians, proceeding to slaughter the retreating Menophite armies. However, this soon got a bit problematic as soon as the god Temekan, father of the Cthulhu and Amascut, swiftly interfered, and he did this by sacrificing his own life. And in turn, that sacrifice ended up killing off his army's half of his empire as well, just to repel the Zarosians. He used his powers of fire to create a massive explosion, absolutely massive. And this turned half of the Caridian Empire into a desert wasteland. That's why it's a desert today. Previously it was just full of plants and not greenery. And now, because of Temekan's sacrifice, he ended up annihilating both armies, including his and Zaros's, and basically laid waste to his own empire. It was utterly obliterated. And it was because of this that approximately at the time 500 Mahjarrat were said to be present. And due to that one simple attack by Temekan, less than a fifth survived the explosion, and this was all thanks to Azanadra, who quickly erected a magical barrier as protection. And as you know, Sliske was clearly amongst those to survive, and soon joined up with all the rest of the survivors in joining with Zaros on the march to Farinthi. When they finally actually arrived at Farinthi though, he was soon given the rank of Praefectus Praetorio within the Zarosian Empire. This rank, well, it basically effectively made him the head of Sentiston's secret police. And Sentiston is Zaros' capital at the time. So this position, quite high up and quite a lot of power involved. And it was here that he had literally limitless power, with another Mahjarrat by the name of Trendine serving under him. And because of this, few dared to question him. At some point though, Sliske wrote and ended up performing a play for Sentiston's elite. This included demons and powerful human merchants, as well as bureaucrats. Before the play though, Sliske would take, quote, unwanted humans or problematic humans from the city streets. He would then dress them with brightly coloured costumes and fit them with crude wooden masks. These masks were then operated by Sliske, and the masks would speak aloud and control the actors' movements, causing them to perform Sliske's play jerkily. Able only to watch themselves carry out these actions and absolutely powerless to resist. The climax of the play often saw these actors forced to stab each other to death with their weapons. Though in one particularly memorable showing, one actor died midway through this performance. In response to it though, Sliske's masks simply continued to control the corpse as if it were alive, and the show continued. Sliske's play was immensely popular with the crowds and was performed a dozen times until Sliske eventually grew bored and moved on to another pet project. Not a lot is known about Sliske's actions during the fall of Zaros though, which soon came after. This was when Zaros' general Zamorak started a rebellion which ended with Zaros vanishing and Zamorak becoming a god himself. But at the point where Zamorak actually struck Zaros, Sliske, as far as we know, is just elsewhere. Zamorak and Saradomin attempted to capture and convert everything and everyone that remained of the Empty Lord's empire after this, and this carried on throughout the entirety of the God Wars. And the God Wars came about because Zamorak, upon becoming a god and coming back, declared war against everyone in an attempt to reclaim the Stone of Jazz. This Zarosian extermination proved mostly successful though, seeing that nearly all Zarosian settlements either fell or were captured, and in turn most of his followers either switched sides or simply went into hiding. Sliske, we believe, is among one of those, and if that wasn't it, then they were simply slaughtered on the spot. While Sliske didn't actively participate in these wars, unlike allies such as Azenadra and Mahjarrat, who did do quite a bit throughout these God Wars, he certainly did have involvement in them, and is known to have done a number of things throughout them, and this is supposedly mostly to further the Zarosian cause. Well, moving on though. Next up, you got the Morytania Campaign. Is kind of like the next major point in time. You start to hear a fair amount of information about Sliske. And the Morytania Campaign happened some time after his aid in the coup of Zaros. The vampire overlord Lewurniel Virginiad Draken took up the plan to conquer Hallowland, which is now known as Morytania. He did this to claim it as his own, after which Draken soon invaded the country with his army of vampires. The defending Ician put up a very good fight though, however the country did eventually fall. When Draken managed to reach the capital of Hallowville, where humans and Ician lived in peace, he managed to kidnap their queen's husband Acertes. This in turn forced Queen Ephorete to surrender and give up the city to him. Draken gave power to an already strong vampire by the name of Vanstrom Klaus, and this was in order to find the last Ician of Hallowland, Ephorote's son, Saverlan. He soon renamed this city to Mahjarrat, and he turned the city into a ghetto where humans were farmed for blood and the entire continent was permanently covered within dark clouds. Its once pristine environment became a haunted swamp infested by ferocious monsters. Though later on at this time, the Saradominists decided to campaign, and this was launched towards the end of the God Wars, one of several in history actually that attempted to liberate the Sanguinesti region from the area which Draken ruled. This army consisted of several thousand mercenaries and warriors, and this was all in an attempt to reclaim what was called Morytania in the name of Saradomin. And this campaign in particular were led by 6 brothers, each very adept at their branch of combat. Sliske appeared before them as the campaign was about to set off, however he was disguised once again. He decided that he would grant them great powers, and because of this the campaign soon advanced, albeit with difficulty, and after one last stop the army reached the walls of the capital of Darkmire and Castle Draken. Sliske once more appeared before the 6 brothers, Arim, Darak, Guthan, Carol, Torag and Vurak, and spoke to them. He told them that he had given them power so that they could serve their god, but now it was time for them to serve his own. The brothers soon all subsequently died, and were entered into the barrows just outside of Darkmire. This in turn ended the Saradominist campaign. Without the 6 leaders, the campaign grew into shambles, and soon it was just left. Sliske, however, remained, and in turn raised the brothers as his undead minions, and tasked them with guarding a precious Zarosian artifact. Draken, however, did suffer a blow, but due to the brothers' death, this campaign failed and the vampires soon turned out victorious. Sliske then proceeded to fulfill an assignment for his ally Azenadra, which they had convened over previously, as at the time Azenadra had actually been imprisoned in Jaldrak's pyramid after fruitlessly attempting to restore communication with Zaros. Sliske took an ancient artifact in turn and concealed it within the barrow's crypts, ordering his wights to guard it. The artifact was an icon that absorbed prayer energy, and Azenadra figured he would later need it. The Barrows brothers did a great job of this, as the icon was never stolen until Azenadra later ordered its retrieval. The next major notage of where Sliske comes into play was with the release of Nex. This was still within the God Wars period, but it was a major event in a way. This was soon after the purge of Zaros' followers, and it was at the time where it was kind of at its highest. It reached its peak. It was going absolutely bonkers, wiping out Zaros' followers. The last army of Zaros was trying to secure the location of the Mahjarrat ritual stone. However, they were soon attacked by Saradominists. Zaros' forces were led by the devastating creature by the name of Nex. The Saradominus had no hope of defeating such an immense force. So with great effort, they did manage to drive Zaros' army back into a cave where they were sent into an enchanted sleep, after which the cave was sealed. Saradomin in turn then erected the Temple of the Lost Ancients around it, as even Zaros' most powerful champion Azanadra fell to the forces of Zamorak and Saradomin, and the settlements of Zaros soon fell one by one. Sliske did what he did best and went into hiding. Towards the end of the God Wars though, a small flock of Armadill's Aviantes followers were ambushed by a much larger group of demons that Zamorak had sent. These Aviantes carried the God Sword, an exceptionally powerful weapon imbued with the power of a deity. Unable to repel the attack though, the Aviantes fled into that very same temple, unaware of what it was there for and why it was covered. Forces from all sides soon arrived at this temple and the Battle of the God Sword soon erupted. Sliske, seizing this opportunity, soon disguised himself as a follower of Guthix and used his great manipulating influence on a group of Saradominists. He told them that Guthix was an almighty god, and he was the only one powerful enough to stop this war, which actually sometime later did turn out to be true. But that ritual had to be performed by, well, to awaken Guthix, this immensely powerful god that is currently sleeping. The priests, amongst whose numbers was RSLore race, converted to Guthixianism, and in turn they performed the ritual. However, to their horror, the ritual instead unlocked the seal Saradomin had soon placed, and in turn opened up the ancient prison, as had been the Mahjarrat's intention all along. Nex and her forces were soon free, and soon went rampant. Nex's forces started to annihilate everything in sight, and caused huge losses amongst all sides. And all while this was going on, Sliske simply slipped away again. His work was complete. Unbeknownst to Sliske though, all four forces, those of Zamorak, Armadill, Saradomin as well as Bandos, united. Such was the threat of Nex and her minions. This is the only time in history that this actually happened, and they actually managed to drive back Nex and her crew. Eventually they succeeded and they managed to seal the army of Nex behind a frozen door, and to make sure it stayed locked, the key was smashed within 4 pieces. One was to be guarded by each faction. Their common threat soon defeated, the factions, as you'd expect, once again broke into fighting with one another. RSLore saw the error of her ways, and soon became a nature spirit in the icy prison, ready to warn people for the atrocities ahead should they ever breach that frozen door. When the God Wars were brought to an end by Guthix's large campaign and subsequent banishment of the gods with the Edicts of Guthix, the God of Balance ordered a powerful mage by the name of Aeternum to freeze the temple in time, causing Nex and all others to enter yet again another sleep. So after that point, honestly, you don't hear from Sliske for a very, very long time. In fact, it's not until the 5th Age until you actually even hear mention of him. And he appears within the 18th Ritual of Rejuvenation. And Sliske, as you'd expect, as always, arrived to the ritual shortly after the main star. He revealed himself to the present adventurer as the individual who had been keeping the Barrows brothers trapped as vengeful spirits. He appeared at Gorak for the Ritual of Rejuvenation, just at the time that the adventurer whom he'd been following for quite some time, Wahisetal and Sir Tiffy Cashin, and a battalion of Temple Knights were about to fight Lucian and his forces. And, as if perfect timing, appeared and then joined the fight against Lucian, aiding in defeating the powerful ice demons that he summoned. When the ritual commenced, Sliske went along with Lucian's suggestion that the fellow Zarosian Jalan should be sacrificed because he had become the weakest of their kind. When the decision was about to be made though, Wahisetal demanded that Lucian had to be the one sacrificed due to the danger he posed. This, as you'd expect, soon brought up a fight between the Zarosians and the Zamorak in Mahjarrat. And it was during this fight Sliske ended up summoning the Barrows brothers once more to fight off Zamorgul's followers. starting with armoured zombies and ending with Zamorgul's second-in-command, Mahjarrat. Zamorgul soon summoned Arav to keep Sliske and his whites at bay, but the adventurer who was present broke Arav's curse using the latter's heart, and the hero of Varrock proceeded to send a flurry of attacks towards Zamorgul. Unable to withstand both Arav's as well as Azenadra's attacks, Zamorgul begged Lucian for help, but after his cousin simply ignored him, he realised Wasteland had been right, and prompted all majharrat present to turn on Lucian. And in turn, they all agreed, and both Zarosian and Zamorakian forces focused their attacks on the aspiring god. However, the ritual was still completed, and, in turn, Jalan was sacrificed. Azenadra summoned the power of Zaros, severely damaging Lucian in the process. Enraged though, Lucian brought in and touched the Stone of Jazz in an attempt to use its power to punish the opposing Mahjarrat. However, the Dragonkin were also summoned, and, in turn, they killed Lucian after a short but intense fight. After witnessing Lucian's death, most of the Mahjarrat soon teleported away, terrified by this power of the Dragonkin, but still satisfied by the outcome of the ritual. Sliske was one of the two Mahjarrat that did not teleport away, the other being Mahjarrat. Instead, impressed by the adventurer's power, Sliske remained in an attempt to claim him as a new addition to his collection. However, his attempt failed as the priest Agrase jumped in and saved him, just in the nick of time. Agrase in turn was soon turned into a white, called Agrase the Doomed, and Sliske teleported away with his new minion, commenting that he would do for now, before Sir Tiffy could attack him. After this ritual though, Sliske went in pursuit of the Dragonkin trio, and found out that one of them, by the name of Strithith, had been assigned to guard the shaft of the Staff of Armadil. Upon spotting the Mahjarrat, Strithith charged at him, holding the staff in hand. However, this led him right into Sliske's trap for the Dragonkin, and into the Shadow Realm. The Dragonkin was immediately captured by him. Sliske proceeded to repair the staff by attaching another orb made from shards beneath the ritual plateau before turning his attention to his prisoner once more. Sliske now found himself in possession of the Staff of Armadil. Sliske's powers and characteristic traits were soon amplified, causing him to gain deeper and deeper desire for treacherous plots he considered as fun. Quite some time after this though, Sliske disguised himself as a shadowed figure, to do some reconnaissance around Gielinor and to follow the adventurer he wanted to claim previously. He could be found around the Grand Exchange at some times, and the entrance to the God Wars dungeon, and he's also spotted near the ruins by the Legends Guild. Sometime afterwards though, an archaeologist from the Varrock Museum by the name of Orlando Smith soon discovered an ancient Guthixian site in Kandarin. Thinking that this may actually be the resting place of Guthix himself, a location that many Mahjarrat had looked for a long time after the end of the God Wars, Sliske quickly formed a plan. This plan was of action to find Guthix, and soon undo his edicts. Azenadra, Wahaseatl and Akthanikos also became aware of this, and decided to attempt to negotiate Zaros' return with Guthix, once they had reached him. They did this because there would be much to learn from such an ancient being, and it would be more beneficial to have their god return. Sliske, though initially disagreeing, seemingly went along with this plan, despite Wahaseatl's reminders of Sliske's cunning nature. Azenadra, however, put his full trust within Sliske. When Orlando enlisted the adventurer's help to explore the dungeon, the adventurer strangely being able to open this ancient door, they accidentally set off the alarm system of the cavern, unbeknownst to them, also waking Guthix. After Orlando was slain by 3 Order Maidens, which are part of the security system, thinking he was a Mahjarrat, Sliske soon presented himself, pretending to be Guthix. The adventurer didn't actually believe this, however, and Sliske revealed his true identity, explaining why the Order Maidens had traced a Mahjarrat lifeform. He stated that his intention was to find Guthix and negotiate Zaros' return. He did not plan to kill him, at least that's what he said. which is what other gods' followers were supposedly looking for. He explained that they were standing in Guthix's resting place, and that triggering the alarm was sensible all over the world. He predicted that many other creatures were about to storm in, eager to reach Guthix and kill him in return for their own god. As such, he advised the adventurers' side with the Zarosians, who actually would not kill Guthix, all whilst pretending to side with the Guthixians, who would want to protect Guthix obviously, to reach him first. When asked why Sliske should be trusted, he simply said he shouldn't be. After that, he concealed them in the Shadow Realm, and they visited the wilderness crater, where the sword of Guthix had slammed into the ground when declaring his edicts was pulsating red light. Sliske explained that the sword had been activated when the alarm was triggered, and that it was communicating with all the stone circles, including the Zamorakian one near Varrock. They then spied on Zamorgul and Sharathtur in the former's fortress, seeing Zamorgul finding out that Guthix's cave had been discovered by some dark wizards, reported to him after their stone circle was crying out with pain. Soon they moved on to the entrance of the God Wars dungeon, and noticed that Commander Ziliana was flying off towards the cave to return Zaradomin. As they returned to the cave, the ground began shaking with Zeliana, Kriara and Krill Sutzaroth soon stormed in their attempt to assassinate Guthix, to which Sliske soon teleported away, advising the adventurer to try not to die. He then proceeded to the ancient prison and soon released Nex, while Azanadra travelled to notify Char. As the adventurer defeated Kriara and ventured further into the cave, allying themselves with the Guardians of Guthix and other important Guthixians, they arrived within the central chamber when all factions soon began to attack at once. A mighty battle soon began to erupt, and after dealing with General Grador, Krill Sutzaroth, Zamorgul as well as Anakra, Ziliana appeared with her army and killed the Guardian of Guthix, Krez, thinking him to be Guthix. Having secretly followed the Zaradominus, the powerful Zarosian swarmed the room, and after a tense discussion, while no one paid attention, Sliske managed to sneak past as well as betray his faction and the adventurer. Sliske soon broke into the final chamber and quickly annihilated Guthix with the legendary staff of Armadil. Proving his allies' trust misplaced, even Azanadra was surprised by this act, despite earlier warnings from Wahisiadal not to believe that Sliske would not kill Guthix. It later became known that Sliske acquired some power from Guthix, and Sliske's allies at this point stated with much security that such betrayal is normal for Sliske, and that he was always loyal to Zaros. Additionally, other Zarosian Mahjarrat believed that he had not achieved godhood by killing Guthix, which, yeah, true enough, eventually found out to be actually true. However, this didn't really stop him, as sometime after the death of Guthix, Sliske managed to use the staff to discover the connection between Sitzrath and the Stone of Jazz, allowing him to pinpoint its location. Depending on the coordinate the adventurer had in mind after the ritual Rejuvenation when he banished the Stone of Jazz, Sliske found the stone either beneath the Barrows, the bottom of Crandor Sea, underneath Trollheim, or underneath the Temple of Lost Ancients. It could also be found in the cave where he had killed Guthix. He kept his possession of both Elder artifacts a very well guarded secret. Having learned of the Dragonking's wrath due to the events of the 18th ritual, Sliske now had knowledge not to use the stone to empower himself any further. Instead, he found out it could also be used to transfer knowledge only, and by doing so he saw visions of Zaradomin and Lucian among others using it. His power greater than ever and possibly in possession of the two most powerful Elder artifacts, Sliske decided to host a game amongst the gods pertaining to RuneScape. After the death of Guthix, when he was ordered by Zaros himself to create a distraction for his return. It was to this end he captured the Empyrean Citadel in the sky, with the Aviantes of Armadil once held court. He took it over with his wights and transformed the throne room into a stage for himself with podiums for several gods to stand on. He began planning his grand ascendancy, an event which he would announce his ascension to godhood to the other gods. Soon after the end of the cataclysmic Battle of Lumbridge, Sliske set his plans in motion. He knew Armadyl would attend because he had conquered his citadel, and Zamorak would not miss an event wherein another Mahjarrat would follow his path and invite him without expecting any protests. He also assured Bandos' attendance by promising him war and the presence of his fellow gods. Additionally, he invited Zaros, Guthix, symbolically since he actually murdered him, Marimbo as well as Brassica Prime. Although only Brassica Prime would attend in person. Next, he set up a plot involving the murders of several Saradominus monks and Serenist elves, and made it seem as if the elves had slain the monks and the Saradominus the elves, thus assuring the attendance of Saradomin, who had travelled to the citadel to simply confront Seren. The Crystal Goddess, however, was absent, after shattering herself after the God Wars. Although Zaros was not corporeally present, a purple haze did appear above his podium. Additionally, the gods took some of their followers with them, all of whom were denied access to the throne room by the Barrows brothers. Finally, Sliske needed to ascertain the presence of his nemesis, Ecthlarin, god of the dead, and to accomplish this, he kidnapped Herald Death, Reaper of Souls. This kidnapping rendered the souls of the dead unable to pass on to the grim underworld, and so Ecthlarin began an investigation as to what had happened to his colleague while Mahjarrat's helpers would attempt to fulfill his duty during his absence. All whilst doing this, Ecthlarin joined forces with the aforementioned adventurer, who was soon investigating the murders of the Saradominists and the Serenists. When they noticed Ecthlarin's arrival, White, to whom Sliske had assigned his task, emerged from the ground and attacked, in turn leaving an invitation box upon defeat. This invitation contained invitations to Ecthlarin as well as yourself. Although the god realised it was another of Sliske's tricks, he and his companion were forced to go to the citadel to rescue Death. The adventurer soon began searching for him, while Ecthlarin entered the throne room. A heated discussion immediately sparked up between these gods, with Ecthlarin desperately attempting to convince them of Sliske's manipulative and devious nature. As the adventurer reached the end of Sliske's puzzles and received an invitation to the event rather than finding Death, Sliske himself actually arrived. He presented Death in a cage, and, on the opposite side, Sitzreth in another cage, before revealing the ascendancy had been a ruse, announcing his possession of the Stone of Jazz and declaring a contest. He promised he would give this stone to whoever managed to kill the most deities by the next solar eclipse. The shocked gods responded in various ways when Sliske released Sitzreth, and tossed the adventurer the key to Death's cage, before retreating into the Shadow Realm. Striseth and the Necrosurti immediately gave in to his rage and began firing dragonfire at the various false users around the room, prompting all the gods save Brassica and Ecthlarin to teleport to safety. The adventurer managed to release Death, who retrieved his sight and teleported himself and his two companions away. Afterwards, Striseth caused some more destruction around the citadel before leaving as well. Only Brassica Prime remained on his podium, although it seems he was oblivious to the events that had transpired, thinking the ascendancy to be a tribute to himself and enjoying the feeling of his podium's cushion against his leaves. As it would transpire though, the true purpose of the ascendancy was to serve as a diversion for Zaros. With the other gods preoccupied with Sliske's tournament, Zaros could now return unnoticed and unchallenged, all as he had planned. Sliske's current whereabouts remained unknown. The gods intend to participate in his contest in their quest for power, be it voluntarily or not. Sometime after the ascendancy, a large battle soon broke out between Bandos and Armadyl, the former aiming to win the stone, the latter to stop his arch-nemesis. The Mahjarrat himself at one point began experimenting with his power by torturing and manipulating the minds of the Barrows brothers, amplifying their powers immensely. A short while later, a number of men, women, wizards and witches began to follow Sliske's ideals, presumably learning of him through Relomia, and sought to turn the godless against the other factions during the battle between Bandos and Armadyl that broke out after the Ascension. Others would play a little game before giving one of the factions a set of golem parts. And now we move up to kind of recent day. Sliske was later enlisted by Azanadra to pull the World Gate out of the Shadow Realm and allow Zaros to return to Gillinor. Sliske informs the adventurer about how to repair the World Gate and in turn helps in returning it to the material realm. When Zaros, however, finally returned to Gillinor, he gathered with all of his followers, assigning them orders and tasks. However, he excommunicated Sliske. This was likely due to his now questionable loyalty. Later though, the adventurer encountered Sliske once more in the Empyrean Citadel, and Sliske promises to answer one of his questions. He revealed that he did not, in fact, ascend to godhood by killing Guthix, and confirmed his possession of the Stone of Jazz when asked. Although he did state that he was using it sparingly, in order to avoid the wrath of the Dragonkin. When asked whose idea it was to kill Guthix, he admitted that it was his own, not Zaros's, and when asked what his plans were, he revealed that he intended to allow the Second God Wars to continue. Taking a back seat in the event, he claimed to keep the few promises he does make, meaning that he will continue to aid Zaros through the distraction provided by his tournament, despite his excommunication. Finally, he rewarded the World Guardian with a gift, the ability to actually see into the Shadow Realm without the Ring of Visibility, as he wishes for them to see him coming in the future. So all in all, that's pretty much the entirety of Sliske's history. It's quite long. He's been about for quite a while. He's participated in quite a bit as well, let's be honest. It's Sliske. So yeah, that is pretty much everything you possibly need to know about Sliske. So, just like his brothers, he came from his homeworld Freneskae, and they all participated with Ixthlarin against the Zarosians. Soon he ended up swapping sides, started to join Zaros. Supposedly he wasn't there or anything to do with the fact that Zamorak managed to, I guess slay might be the right word, Zaros at the time in order to take his power. Although knowing Sliske, he was probably in the Shadow Realm giggling like a little girl watching everything that was going on. He later then participated in the Morytania Campaign and ended up kind of helping Draken, which actually was affiliated with Zamorak. So yeah, but rather than do it to actually help Zamorak, he did it in turn to actually obtain the whites. And the reason why he wanted to obtain these whites is because he was having a conversation with Azanadra, a fellow Zarosian Mahjarrat, and they needed to take an ancient artifact and allow it to absorb prayer, and placing these whites within a holy site and placing the ancient artifact alongside them, they kind of helped each other. As it was a holy place, the artifact would keep siphoning prayer. Simultaneously, the whites that go alongside it will protect it from any intruders. So he left that there in order to communicate with Zaros at a later date. But while all that was going on, he ended up finding out that Nex was imprisoned, and in turn decided to try and release her, and actually succeeded by playing a little game with some Saradominists, and probably was giggling his twat off then as well when he slaughtered everything. But nonetheless he did succeed and Nex was released, although she was later imprisoned once more. The next time you see him after that, bearing in mind that was like the end of the Third Age, you skip the Fourth Age, we don't even know what he did during that time, and then you skip a large chunk of the Fifth Age. And then you come to the 18th Ritual of Rejuvenation, which I'm sure you all know is where he participated in the fight against Lucian. But he was mainly there just to get powered up, just like every other Mahjarrat, let's be honest. And then after that, he hunted down the Dragonkin, managed to obtain the Staff of Armadil, slaughters Guthix, and in turn, because he captured the Dragonkin, finds out where the Stone of Jazz is, locates and obtains it, and then announces this tournament in order to cause a distraction for Zaros, so Zaros could come back into Gillinor. That is Sliske's history in a nutshell. So there we go, hopefully you found that interesting. Either way people, I think that's pretty much it. So until next time, I will catch you all later, have a good one.